So we are going to be going ahead with our next session. It's Navigating Web 3.0. And I would request Mr. Suril Desai, partner, Nishith Desai, associate, to please come and join me on the dais. A big round of applause for him, everyone.
Good afternoon. I know this is going to be the toughest session to conduct post lunch. Everyone's got their snooze buttons on. So, to keep you guys, how my job will be to keep you enthralled with Web3 for the next 20 minutes or so. But before I start, how many of you all know the difference between Web 1, Web 2, and Web 3? That would be it's very important that you know the difference between the three. So, with a show of hands, how many of you all know the difference? Okay. No, so basically, if you have to navigate the Web 3.0, right? It's a new animal of its own kind. It's like a big whale, and how do you uh, get it's important to know what. Even I have a tough time remembering the difference between Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. But if you look at the chronologically, Web 1 came into existence in the early late part of the 80s and the early part of the 90s. And at that time, it was a bunch. You needed to know how to code to share your information. So basically, you had to be a coder. Only then you could get yourself published. Then came Web 2.0, where you don't necessarily need to know programming to get yourself published. So you have things like social media, right? You don't need to be a coder to use Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or anything of that sort. But what really became the driving force for Web 2.0 was data. So it was centralized, and all these mega corporate tech companies like Google and Facebook decided that they would take control of the data. So data became a huge driver for these companies. And now Web 3.0 is decentralization of these big tech companies. So what's happening is that we are seeing decentralization of content, decentralization of data, decentralization of finance, and all of these are coming together and creating a whole new era. We are entering a new era of communication, because it's all about communication. If you uh, in Web 1, you were just doing simple messaging, you were just sending out emails. Then it became slightly more interactive with the messenger. After that came the social media, where you could send out a message to people you don't know. You could connect with people you don't know on LinkedIn. You could connect with, you could tag people. You could do hashtags and things like that. In Web 3.0, it's going to be more about the individual. So it's going to be like people want to take control of their data now, right? So if you look at the way the advertisement sector has moved along the whole internet's lifespan so far, in the beginning we had banner ads. Like you go on a website and you'd see a lot of banners. You'd see these pop-ups which would constantly come up on your browsers. And then uh, and then after post that, you had more interactive media, right? On Facebook looks at your data, and based on your content, it sends out certain kinds of advertisements to you, which you interacted with. Now in Web 3.0, it's going to be behavioral. So it's going to scan what your buying patterns are, what are you shopping for, what are your reactions to certain comments and certain uh, news breaking stories or things like that. And based on that, the advertisement will be catered towards that. But the biggest challenge today is that, while the centralized tech companies have been able to monetize on data, people are asking the question, who owns this data, right? And data ownership is going to be the biggest question for all of us. Is it the government that owns the data? Is it the tech company that owns the data? Is it the individual that owns the data? And in Web 3.0, people will be able to monetize on their data. That's the beauty of it. It's why should companies like Facebook and Google be the only beneficiaries of your data? Why should their profits go up while you are left with pretty much nothing other than an account? So in and then we come into the phase of decentralized finance, right? Because if you look at finance is probably the most undemocratic institutions of our society, and it is the most significant uh, institution. If someone were to ask me if I was given a choice to go and vote on election day to choose my prime minister or choose the governor of the central bank, I would choose to vote for the governor of the central bank, because it's finance that affects my life the most, and because it's undemocratized, things such as cryptocurrencies have emerged. Cryptocurrency came out on the tailwinds of the 2008 financial crisis. The Bitcoin white paper, which is probably the most authoritative material available today, which is free. Bitcoin had no one who was marketing it. Bitcoin had no marketing budget. It had no lobbyists. It had nothing. It was just an idea in an open source environment that was given away to people. It was something like the Pythagoras' theorem, right? Everyone uses the Pythagoras theorem, but nobody questions and asks who Pythagoras is, right? You believe in the mathematics of it. And Bitcoin was probably one of the first instances of a purely mathematically backed currency. And the idea was to uh, uh, democratize finance. The earliest users of the Bitcoin were people who are on margins of society. It was your drug dealers on the streets of New York who started using it. And then from there, they realized what the New York state realized is that because everything went virtual, street crimes went down. It was quite a interesting uh, thing that happened. And because the street crimes went down, the enforcement agencies were like, is this for real? What's happening? We are completely unaware of what's happening. And it evolved, and now, based on the principles that are enshrined in the Bitcoin white paper, all the other crypto 15, there are close to 15,000 cryptocurrencies now, they all have used Bitcoin as its skeletal system. And most of the almost, I would say, all the cryptocurrencies aside of Bitcoin are centralized, because Bitcoin is the only truly decentralized crypto out there. Because there is no owner of Bitcoin. There is no institution that controls Bitcoin. It's just a bunch of people who have come together and have realized that there is an alternative to the financial system. Because if you look at our financial system, it's it you can be censored out of your system. Like, if you take the case of what's happening to Russia, right, in the Ukraine crisis, they have weaponized the financial systems to put certain countries under, gray list, white list, black list, whatever you call them. And people have to survive, right? And the only medium of exchange that's at the moment, in these times of crisis that's going on, is cryptocurrency. In fact, you're seeing a seismic shift in the way commerce and enterprise are going to be run. We you With this whole new era of decentralization, we are going to see institutions and groups coming together, just for purpose. And it'll be like, I know I might be going a little here and there, but I'm just trying to formulate my thoughts because it's such a it's got to do so much with psychology. It's like, who do you trust in an environment where, do you trust your financial institutions who have, the power right now? Do you trust the government? Do you trust these new tech entrepreneurs? Who do you trust? And trust in a trustless society becomes a very powerful medium uh, for our survival. And if you look at the evolution of trust, right? Trust began in silos. First it was the caveman who was considered to be the protector and the benefactor of of his household. So the caveman would go out, hunt, and bring back the food for the family. From that emerged small tribes, and tribes, it was a bunch of cavemen who came together and who formed tribes. From tribes came kingdoms, where the king became the monarch and the patriarch of the society. And post that, we had something called parliamentary democracies, which emerged. Now, parliamentary democracy's first instance was in Iceland, where they experimented with parliamentary form of democracy, where it was where you are electing representatives to represent a, so that was decentralization. And to navigate the Web 3.0, you will have to come to terms with decentralization. But what is this decentralization, right? I mean, it's decentralization of power. It's decentralization of command and we are moving away from command and control kind of ecosystems to completely decentralized. Like if you talk to a Gen Z or a uh, uh, the millennial generation, they are completely glued in. They understand that ownership does not have to be mandated necessarily from the state. Ownership, how do you prove your ownership without the mandate of the state? So ownership issues, finance issues, uh, command and control, all of these are being questioned right now by the people and the proponents of this whole ecosystem of Web3. Web3 is also not just your augmented and virtual reality. In fact, that's just the tip of the iceberg. You will see people, COVID has taught us that you don't necessarily have to be in an office to be productive. You can sit in the jungles or you can sit on the beach and still be productive and work. And Web3 is just an enhanced version of the internet that we have today. And it's here to stay. And how do you, it's and the word Web3 for the first time was used only in 2014 by Gavin Wood at an Ethereum conference. So it's still a very, very new technology. And people like Mark Zuckerberg have invested close to $10 billion in it already. You have, you have these new uh, companies from India, like they originated in India, but now have migrated out to places like Dubai, like Polygon and things like that. And how do you, the workforce is going to be global now. It's not going to be that you're just looking after, because when you're traveling on the internet, if you're going to a website in some uh, neighboring country's website, you don't have to pass through all the immigration controls. To send an email, you don't have immigration controls. But most of our businesses are being conducted on emails, right? And that's, we are actually already in the Web 3.0. You have your WhatsApp groups, right? They are an ecosystem of their own kind. So these are not formalized systems. These are mostly informal connections that you make. And with these informal connections, you navigate through the whole your life. It's like you'll create an avatar in the Web3, which will be a representative of your thoughts and your feelings, but it won't be you. You will have machine learning And you will have instances where when Internet of Things comes into being, you will have machine to machine commerce taking place. So now, who should be taxed in that situation? Like if your refrigerator, you know, with its IoT devices and all, is connected directly with Amazon, and your milk is over or your eggs are over, and your refrigerator itself places an order, so there is no human involvement in the transaction. So how do you, you know how do you uh, how do you tax such situations? So, and Web3, I mean, it's it's like, it's not a new phenomena. It's just that we have almost close to 3.4 billion people communicating with each other now. There are, I mean, on Facebook itself, there are, it's called a nation, right? Facebook Nation. And people are connecting with each other on different ideas. You have things like digital nomads, who people who just are living off grid. They are not using the traditional banking systems. They are not using government issued currencies. They're using these cryptocurrencies, and they're living their entire life just by living on cryptocurrencies and decentralized finance. And it's it is the Wild West. I would not deny it. It's like, you will have a lot of scams. There is no doubt about it. And these scams will be like FTX. Everyone saw what happened to FTX, right? And some of the information that's coming out now is that FTX was bribing US senators so that they would not get charged by the SEC. That's one of the information that's out there. And that bribed all kinds of senators. And then you have this mammoth of other exchanges and other nations like Russia and so we are in the stage where we are in Web 3.0, and we are at the same time in Cold War 2.0. So it's like, and there is this whole cyber warfare that's happening, that's unfolding itself in front of us. We are seeing uh, lot of data and information is getting hacked. Hackers, you know, probably are the most important people right now. You, whether they are ethical or non-ethical, it doesn't matter, as long as coding is going to become so important and so significant for everyone. I mean, not just for technologists, but even for lawyers, accountants. You will have to learn some amount of code, because these systems are, and it and it's not that hard to code anymore. You have a uh, lot of platforms that are emerging, that enable and empower you to learn coding in a fast and easy way. Education is becoming completely virtual. With Zoom conferences, you don't you know you don't need to be in a physical presence to get, you know s- and and the whole COVID situation has only enhanced the development of this technology. Goldman Sachs has said that this could be a uh, $8 trillion opportunity. Now, yes, that's true, but it's going to be, there will be a lot of nuances involved in this. Like, how do you transact? How do you come to terms with this whole ecosystem of Web 3? It it's quite alien. It's quite an alien concept, that that like play to earn. Like gaming is becoming so big. People are literally quitting their jobs and becoming full-time gamers. So you're competing with, as institutions, you'll have a big challenge with your workforce as well. Like, how do you retain them? Because people are moonlighting, right? Moonlighting has become such a common thing now, and you can't stop people from moonlighting. It's going to be very difficult, because the employees will say that, if you're working for an XYZ company, they'll say that, but the company is investing in other companies of its, and they don't have a problem with that. But when I'm doing some investing on my own, my time in other companies, they have a problem with it. So it's it's a huge animal. This whole Web3, technology is here to stay. Technology is going to be a part of, like, there's a joke going on that, people cry more when they lose their phones than they cry at funerals. you know they the paranoia, and then you have this entire new generation of kids which are born between 2008 and 2010, who are turning 9 years old now, right? 9, 12 years old, and they are way sharper than any of us in this room, because they have been brought up in this environment where, you know they are going to live, probably, out of all, they're called the generation alpha, and their lifespans are predicted to exceed, on an average, at least 85 years old. So they're going to have, lifespans are going to become longer, and people are going to work, so it's going to be a very interesting phenomenon. It's the whole internet itself was a sociological experiment. It was initiated during the times of World War II and things like that, by DARPA in the US, and the technology went out, right? So, I mean, and it spread across the world, and today we at a push of a button, we have access to knowledge, wealth, and power. So this is what I would like you to take away with you, that knowledge, wealth, and power are in your hands, and Web3 is just a tool to enhance that. Thank you.
A big round of applause for him, everyone. Thank you so much for that enlightening session. I'd request you to wait 1 minute.
Sure.
And I would request Mr. Bhaskar Tawari to please come here and felicitate. A big round of applause for him as well, everyone. Thank you so much.